Hey everyone, I'm Ian, and as you're probably aware by now, I'm a huge Mega Man fanboy. In fact, I'm dedicating 2018 on my channel to the Blue Bomber. The Mega Man franchise spans several series over the course of the last 30 years, including but not limited to the Classic series, the X series, the Legend series, the Battle Network series. That's pretty much just scratching the surface. There are a ton of Mega Man games, but my personal favorite has always been the Classic series, and with the release of Mega Man Legacy Collections Volume 1 and 2 on the Switch this month, I thought it was an appropriate time to look back at all 10 of the original series Mega Man games. Actually, this video was supposed to come out last month, but with the collection coming out this month, it seemed like a more appropriate time anyway, so let's look at all the games from worst to best. Actually, worst to best isn't really accurate either. It's more like least favorite to favorite because, you know, quality is pretty subjective in this case, since all the games are actually pretty good. I don't think there's any bad games on this list per se, so yeah. Disclaimer though, this is only the main numbered games, so no Game Boy games, no spin-offs or remakes, and no Mega Man and Bass. That game would be last anyway, fuck that game. But with that out of the way, let's get things started with... Mega Man 5 is the definition of by the numbers. Is it a good game? Sure, it's fine. Is it a particularly noteworthy game? Not at all. The near-perfect control is nice, and some of the levels are pleasant to play through, plus it introduces Beat the Bird, who kicks all kinds of ass and fucks shit up. But the weapons are lame, probably the worst in the series actually, and the game as a whole just feels uninspired. The game is technically fine. There's actually a lot less wrong with it than in some of the other games that we're going to be looking at later on this list, but it just sort of exists. It's boring, the definition of average, plus there's chickens on the train level. Like, seriously, what is this? Mega Man 10 is the most complete game in the series in terms of content, bar none. 3 playable characters, each with differences that make the game worth replaying each time. Challenges, extra levels, this game has it all. But when just playing through it normally, taking on the 8 Robot Masters and Dr. Wily as Mega Man, the game is just another Mega Man game. When I'm playing a classic Mega Man game, or a Mega Man game in general, there are a few things I always look for. Solid platforming, pixel-perfect controls, fun boss fights, and badass weapons to unlock. Mega Man 10 has these things sometimes. There are some levels, though, that just aren't any fun. A lot of the weapons are kinda lame, and the bosses are just sorta there. In addition, even though the game features multiple characters, the game doesn't feel super well built for Mega Man himself. Using the Mega Man 1 and 2 moveset of jump, run, shoot is fine when the game is designed around it, but some of these enemies are from games that were released after the slide was introduced to dodge them, so they just sort of feel out of place and irksome to deal with. Again, it's a good game, and it's one with fairly high replay value, but compared to the other games in the series, this one just sort of fails to impress. From here on out, the games are, at least in my opinion, a lot better than the last few games on this list, starting with Mega Man 4. This game represents a step forward in the series. The graphics were more detailed, mini-bosses are in almost every level, the end game is longer, and you can now charge up the Mega Buster to shoot off a more powerful shot. It's not super useful in this game, but it is nice to see Mega Man evolve throughout the earlier installments. Honestly, this game would be a lot higher on the list if not for 2 different nitpicks I have with the game's design. Number 1, spikes. Lots of them. Spikes in Mega Man games means instant death, which is fine, except for the fact that the level designers here clearly had some deep-rooted fetish for spikes that they desperately needed to get out of their systems, you kinky developers, you. Over-reliance on one difficult gimmick makes for some very stale level design. 2, the weapons are, for the first time in the series up to this point, pretty lame. Not all of them are useless, mind you, but most of them suck. This is just kind of a theme now, isn't it? Mega Man 1 is janky as shit. It's clumsy, it's awkward, the controls are worse than any of the other games in the series, and it's the shortest game on this list. Yet I love every minute of it. On a purely personal level, this game is one of my favorites, and if we were including remakes, Mega Man Powered Up would be very much near the top of this list, but since we're only looking at the original versions of each of these games, I can't really put this game any higher on the list because it is very, very flawed. Why does he fall 1,000,000 miles an hour? Why does the game punish you if you don't get the easily missable magnet beam by making the first Wily level literally unbeatable without it? But more importantly, Who cares? It's got so much charm in every area that it mostly makes up for its flaws. Great robot masters, fun boss fights in the castle, yes, including this one, at me bitch, and just nostalgia on my part. The thing that really brings this game down a few pegs on the list though is the control. Mega Man feels slower and clunkier than the later games in the series, and he slides all over the damn place when he's walking around on the ground. Control issues aside though, the game still plays fine, and I do find it to be a lot of fun. Just too janky and flawed to rank it any higher on this list. Next!
Number 6.
Mega Man 8 gets a lot of flack, and honestly, I could never fully grasp why. Is it perfect?
Jump, slide, jump, jump.
No. But it's still pretty fun. This one gets a lot of flack for its voice acting, which is bullshit because it is great, but even despite that, this game is just fun to play, especially when you learn how to use the otherwise lame Mega Ball weapon to double jump. This adds so much to your mobility and lets you fuck around with levels in ways that are definitely not intended. The other weapons are pretty rad too, with most being useful even outside of their respective weakness chain boss fights. The thing that really drags this one down a spot or two on this list are the gimmick levels. Most of the stages have something to try and set them apart. Some are shmups, some are this bullshit, and some are fun as hell, and some are annoying as fuck. This focus on gimmicks is certainly unique in the grand scheme of the series, but deviating so far from the standard formula is a risk, and in this case, it only pays off around half the time. Regardless, this game is still a lot of fun. Super pretty graphics, fun weapons, best voice acting. What more could you want?
When we find that meteor, we'll find Dr. Wily. Number 5.
Oh hell yeah, now we're getting to the good shit. Mega Man 6 is a game that used to get a lot of shit from the fans for being aggressively average, but at some point it became one of the most popular games in the series, and for good reason. This one rocks. The pun not intended. Ugh. Mega Man and his faithful robot dog Rush can actually combine into different forms in this one, altering your moveset and allowing a greater variety of ways to approach every situation presented to you. The main thing that this game gets right is being fun. Pure, simple fun. This is definitely the easiest of the NES Mega Man games, but that's more because of how overpowered Mega Man is rather than any kind of dumbed down level design, which is as solid as ever. He has an upgraded charge shot as well as the slide, allowing him to completely devastate every boss even without their weapon weakness. Despite the OP Buster though, you'll still want to use the weapons anyway just because they're all fun and useful. Well, most of them anyway. This game is a joy from start to finish, even if it's a little too easy.
Number 4.
Mega Man 3 just barely missed out on being in the top 3. This game was a huge step forward for the series, especially in terms of control. This was the first game where Mega Man had pixel-perfect precision to his movement. It was still fun to control Mega Man in the first and second game, but nowhere near as precise as it is here. The game also introduced Rush, who's a lot of fun to use in this particular installment, probably more than anywhere else in the series. In terms of the 8 Robot Master stages and weapons, it's near flawless. I love the addition of the slide, and enemies are perfectly placed and designed around it. The weapons are almost all fun, and the levels are just as fun as their respective boss fights, which are all great. The issues fall in the second half of the game. Doc Robot. Fuck this guy. Basically, he's a robot that has the abilities of the Mega Man 2 Robot Masters. That's cool, right? Well, it should be, but no. Because you gotta play through 4 of the previous stages again, barely altered, with fewer checkpoints and frustrating fights with Doc and his massive hitbox. It's dumb. And then you get to the Wily Castle, and it's the easiest thing ever. Seriously, it's legitimately hard to die unless you're trying to, and just feels so jarring considering it's easier than the rest of the game. Supposedly, this game had a really rushed development cycle, and it definitely shows during the endgame. Despite all that, this game is still a fantastic entry in this series and a great starting point for new fans of the series. And speaking of games with rushed development cycles...
Number 3.
Mega Man 7 was made in only 3 months, and that just blows me away. The classic series jump to 16-bit was definitely a successful one. Borrowing some elements from the excellent Mega Man X, like being able to cycle through your special weapons with the shoulder buttons and finding upgrades throughout the stages, Mega Man 7 also introduces the rather handy shop that makes grinding for E-tanks and such totally unneeded. The fact that all the upgrades can be bought in the shop as well as found throughout the stages for those who prefer to explore is an awesome compromise that makes this element totally non-obtrusive. It also has the most interactions with stage elements that the series has ever seen. Be it freezing lava, causing it to snow, or fire burning down the forest and lighting up the darkness. This game emphasizes direct interaction with the stages, and it works wonderfully. It also introduces fan favorites bass and treble, who are cheesy for sure, but a lot of fun nevertheless. The music is great, the game looks really nice, and the weapons and bosses are some of my favorites. And above all else, Otto is a fucking treasure. This game seems to divide the fan base a lot, but if you ask me, it's one of the best. Mega Man 2 was very nearly number 1 on this list, but I couldn't quite bring myself to put it up that high, just because there are a few very glaring flaws that just drag it down a tiny bit. The control here is just slightly more slippery and slower than the later games, and the turret boss in Wily's castle can die in a dumpster fire. I hate that shit. But otherwise, wow, this game is one hell of a sequel. It improves on every single element that made the first Mega Man game so much fun. The fact that this game was made as a passion project on the side by the developers will never cease to amaze me. The weapons are some of the most useful in the series. The levels are designed with just the right amount of challenge to be a satisfying experience without ever being frustrating, well, except for this. And the Robot Masters are all super memorable. And the fact that you can jump in and experiment with different weapon weaknesses opens the game up for so much experimentation and variation when replaying it. Mega Man 2 is a magical game. I can't quite describe what makes it so special, but something about it just gives it an edge over some games that are technically better. It is very, very good, but it's not technically, in my opinion, the perfect classic Mega Man game. But what classic Mega Man game is perfect? Well... Mega Man 9 is basically Mega Man 2, but with all of the polish of the Mega Man games from 4 onwards. This game helped popularize the sort of faux 8-bit modern pixel art aesthetic that's very much overdone these days, but at the time, it was a really cool return to form. It was followed up by Mega Man 10, but unlike Mega Man 10, Mega Man 9's design is near flawless. Every platform is perfectly placed. Every enemy poses a threat, but is totally fair. Well, almost every enemy. Every boss fight can be taken out in a variety of ways, and every single weapon is useful outside of boss fights. Especially impressive is the weapon set. This is hands down the best weapon set of the entire classic Mega Man series. Black Hole Bomb, Jewel Satellite, Laser Trident, Hornet Chaser, whatever. Every one of the weapons in this game is as fun as it is useful. And even then, it's all totally doable with the standard Mega Buster. Add in the most climactic Wily Castle in the series, a beautiful soundtrack, and some of the most entertaining level design in the franchise, and you've got yourself the definitive classic Mega Man experience. At least for now. Who knows what the future will bring? Well, that's it for this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, be sure to like and comment down below, and subscribe if you want to see more. Any other Mega Man content you want to see throughout 2018, leave a comment down below and let me know. With that being said, I'm out. Bye-bye. Later. Peace.